We document our lives to preserve our humanity. But in the hands of a predator, a lens or a voice recorder becomes a tool to capture a person's final, desperate moments. What happens when the media left behind is not a memory, but a hidden trophy of unspeakable cruelty? We surround ourselves with locks and alarms, clinging to the illusion of absolute safety behind closed doors. But what happens when the worst of humanity refuses to leave their atrocities in the shadows, choosing instead to capture them forever? What drives a predator to document the unforgivable? In the autumn of 1981, a Los Angeles courtroom descended into a stunned, horrified silence as prosecutors pressed play on a standard audio cassette. The magnetic tape captured the agonizing final moments of a young woman named Shirley Lederford, documenting an unparalleled level of cruelty that defied human comprehension. Seasoned reporters and hardened spectators found themselves unable to endure the auditory nightmare, fleeing the courtroom with tears streaming down their faces. This specific recording served as the definitive proof of a spree that had paralyzed Southern California, ensuring the perpetrators could not escape justice for their unseen atrocities. The Dark Alliance began far away from the sunlit beaches of Southern California, taking root behind the towering concrete walls of the California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo. It was the year 1974 when Roy Norris and Lawrence Bittaker first crossed paths in the sterile, oppressive environment of the state prison. Both men harbored disturbed inclinations, hiding their true nature behind a facade of compliant inmate behavior. Instead of seeking rehabilitation, they used their time in confinement to cultivate and refine a shared obsession with control and dominance. They spent countless hours in the prison yard, trading twisted conversations and building a detailed blueprint for future horrors. The institutional routine provided them with endless empty hours to map out how they would operate once the heavy iron gates opened for them. Neither man showed any outward signs of the monstrous plans they were forming, allowing them to slip through the cracks of the parole board evaluations. The prison system failed to recognize the symbiotic danger these two individuals posed when acting as a single unit. They acted as an echo chamber for one another, amplifying their worst impulses until those ideas hardened into a concrete objective. By the time the state granted them their freedom, the abstract concepts discussed in the prison yard had evolved into a calculated agenda. They walked out of the facility not as reformed citizens, but as predators armed with a unified purpose. Their release set a countdown in motion for the unsuspecting residents of the coastal towns down south. The bureaucratic oversight of their discharge released a unique terror into the vibrant, trusting communities of the era. Upon their respective releases, the two men reunited in the sprawling suburban landscape of Southern California to turn their theoretical blueprints into a terrifying reality. They needed a specific mobile environment to execute their plans without drawing the attention of neighbors or passing patrols. In 1979, they pooled their resources and purchased a silver 1977 cargo van. This vehicle appeared ordinary from the outside, blending into the heavy traffic of the Pacific Coast Highway and the crowded parking lots of local shopping centers. However, the interior underwent a chilling, methodical transformation. Norris and Bittaker applied thick layers of soundproofing materials across the metal walls, ensuring that no cries for help could ever breach the exterior panels. They installed dark, heavily tinted windows, blinding the outside world to the horrors contained within the cargo area. The men dubbed this custom creation the Murder Mac, treating the vehicle as a rolling fortress of cruelty. This van erased the need for a stationary holding location, allowing the predators to hunt across multiple county lines with total impunity. The vast network of highways in Los Angeles County provided endless escape routes, while the isolated canyons of the San Gabriel Mountains offered dark, desolate spaces to park undisturbed. The van operated as a trap hidden in plain sight, prowling the bustling streets while offering a false sense of security to those seeking a simple ride. The community went about their daily routines, unaware that a customized mobile dungeon was navigating their residential neighborhoods. The men built an environment where they held absolute power, insulated from the eyes and ears of the outside world. The warm days of June 1979 brought a false sense of peace to the coastal communities of Los Angeles County. 16-year-old Lucinda Schaefer represented the innocence of the era, living a life filled with typical teenage aspirations and close ties to her community. She spent her days attending classes, laughing with friends, and enjoying the vibrant summer atmosphere of the South Bay area. Her daily routine often took her through the busy intersections and sun-drenched sidewalks near her home. On an ordinary afternoon, her path intersected with the sprawling layout of the Pacific Coast Highway in Redondo Beach. The intersection was a bustling hub of activity, surrounded by local businesses and a constant flow of passing vehicles. Pedestrians frequently relied on the kindness of passing drivers to navigate the long stretches of pavement connecting the beach towns. Lucinda found herself walking along this very corridor, unaware of the silver cargo van approaching her position. She had every reason to believe she was safe in broad daylight, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of her hometown. When the van pulled over and the doors opened, the offer of a ride seemed like a harmless gesture of goodwill. The bustling traffic and the bright coastal sun provided a deceptive backdrop for the nightmare that was about to unfold. She stepped up into the passenger area, trusting the ordinary appearance of the men and their vehicle. In that brief, fateful moment, the heavy metal doors slammed shut, sealing her fate behind layers of impenetrable soundproofing. The instant the custom-built locks clicked into place, the trap was sprung, and Lucinda became the first victim of their coordinated cruelty. The vast, sunny expanse of Redondo Beach vanished, replaced by the suffocating darkness of the cargo hold. This sudden disappearance marked the absolute point of no return for Norris and Bittaker, transitioning their long-held fantasies into irreversible actions. They established a deadly pattern of operation right then and there, proving to themselves that their mobile fortress functioned as designed. For Lucinda, the promise of a safe ride home dissolved into an endless nightmare from which there was no possible escape. When she failed to return to her family, a profound sense of panic rippled through her household and the surrounding neighborhood. Local law enforcement agencies began their search, treating the incident as a standard missing persons inquiry without realizing the sheer magnitude of the threat. The investigators scoured the Pacific Coast Highway, canvassing local businesses and distributing flyers in hopes of finding a single witness who had seen the teenager. However, the careful anonymity of the silver van left no trace for the detectives to follow. The lack of physical evidence at the intersection left the authorities grasping at shadows, unaware of the predators operating just beyond their reach. This initial crime set off a relentless 5-month spree of abductions that would leave multiple police departments scrambling for answers. The men tested their horrific methodology, emboldening them to continue their hunt along the coastal roads. The shadow of the silver van began to stretch across Southern California, signaling the beginning of a dark chapter in local history. Throughout the scorching summer and fading autumn months of 1979, 4 more young women vanished into the suffocating grip of the silver van. These victims shared the same bright hopes and daily routines as Lucinda Schaefer, navigating the bustling coastal towns with a false sense of security. To execute their ultimate cruelty, Norris and Bittaker shifted their hunting grounds away from the populated beaches, driving their captives toward the sunrise and into the San Gabriel Mountains. This massive geographical barrier separates the sprawling Los Angeles basin from the arid expanse of the Mojave Desert. The mountain range features thousands of square miles of dense brush, steep granite cliffs, and treacherous ravines. Narrow, unpaved logging roads wind through the towering pines, isolating anyone who travels beyond the main highway markers. Cell phone towers did not exist in this era, and police radio signals struggled to penetrate the deep canyon walls. Once the van crossed the elevation line, the glow of city sodium lights gave way to absolute suffocating darkness. The deafening hum of cicadas and the rustling wind masked any sounds escaping the cargo area. In these remote wilderness pockets, the predators found the ultimate stage to act out their grim fantasies. They parked the rolling fortress in desolate clearings far from the eyes of forest rangers or weekend hikers. The victims stepped out of the customized prison only to face a vast, unforgiving landscape offering zero chance of rescue. The towering trees and jagged rocks became silent witnesses to the devastating final hours of these young women. Every scream vanished into the vastness of the Angeles National Forest, leaving no echo for search parties to follow. While the families of the missing women plastered the coastal cities with desperate search flyers, a chilling parallel reality played out in the mountain shadows. Norris and Bittaker refused to let the suffering of their captives fade into the ether of the wilderness. They possessed a dark compulsion to preserve the agony, turning their unspeakable acts into permanent, tangible trophies. The men brought a standard Polaroid camera and a portable audio cassette recorder on every trip into the San Gabriel Canyons. The mechanical whir of the camera and the heavy click of the shutter became instruments of intense psychological torture. The predators forced the young women to pose in degrading, terrifying conditions, capturing their profound despair on glossy film squares. As the instant photographs developed in the dim light of the van, the attackers taunted their victims with the visual evidence of their helplessness. The tape recorder captured the trembling voices, the desperate pleas for mercy, and the devastating realization that survival was impossible. These men sought absolute domination, using the recording devices to strip away the final shreds of human dignity. They created a meticulous archive of cruelty, cataloging each victim with the detached precision of inventory clerks. This archive remained locked in toolboxes and hidden compartments, serving as a private theater of horrors for the two men. They replayed the tapes and studied the photographs during their everyday routines, reliving the terror they had inflicted upon innocent strangers. The mundane sounds of the cassette spools turning masked a level of depravity that defied the comprehension of standard criminal psychology. Their obsessive documentation transformed the fleeting moments of violence into permanent records of evil. Down in the Los Angeles Basin, a catastrophic breakdown in law enforcement communication allowed the predators to maintain their invisibility. The string of disappearances spanned across multiple distinct city borders, triggering a bureaucratic nightmare for local police departments. A teenage girl vanished from Redondo Beach, while another disappeared miles down the coast in the jurisdiction of the Los Angeles Police Department. Other cases fell under the isolated control of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. In 1979, detectives operated without the benefit of centralized digital databases or automated missing person alerts. Each precinct maintained paper files, storing critical information in overflowing manila folders locked inside metal filing cabinets. The rigid protocol of the era dictated that investigators focus sole attention on crimes occurring within their specific geographic boundaries. A detective in one coastal town had no mechanism to recognize a matching predatory pattern happening just 10 miles down the highway. This fragmented system created massive blind spots, preventing dedicated officers from connecting the dots of a singular escalating threat. When parents begged the authorities to coordinate a broader search, desk sergeants dismissed the connections, classifying the girls as chronic runaways. The legal loophole of waiting 24 hours to file a missing persons report gave the killers a crucial head start after every abduction. The perpetrators exploited these invisible county lines, knowing that a crime committed in one zip code would not raise alarms in another. The jurisdictional chaos shielded the silver cargo van, masking the existence of a coordinated serial operation. The system failed the victims not through a lack of effort, but through a rigid adherence to outdated, isolated policing methods. The physical search for the missing young women morphed into a frustrating, agonizing dead end for the scattered investigative teams. Law enforcement faced an insurmountable forensic challenge when dealing with the colossal scale of the San Gabriel Mountains. The Angeles National Forest covers hundreds of thousands of acres, offering a near-infinite number of hiding places for illicit activity. Search and rescue helicopters flew grid patterns over the towering peaks, but the dense forest canopy blocked any view of the canyon floors. Tracking dogs scoured the hiking trails, yet the dry shifting winds of the high altitude scattered any lingering scent trails. The rugged terrain defeated standard recovery operations, leaving seasoned detectives staring at empty maps in sheer frustration. Investigators required a starting point, a physical piece of evidence linking the missing girls to a specific location or suspect. The meticulous nature of the killers ensured that no torn clothing or personal effects remained at the original abduction sites along the coastal highways. The pristine interior of the soundproof van contained the horror, preventing any transfer of evidence to the outside world. Without a crime scene to analyze, forensic technicians had no fingerprints to dust, no tire tracks to cast, and no fibers to collect. The absence of physical clues paralyzed the investigation, forcing detectives to chase phantom leads and useless alibis. The calendar pages turned without a single suspect materializing, cementing the illusion that these young women had vanished into thin air. The families endured a torturous limbo, waiting by their telephones while the authorities admitted they had exhausted all available resources. By the deep autumn of 1979, the police operation ground to a halt, stymied by a total lack of forensic data. The absolute stagnation of the police progress fueled a terrifying sense of invincibility within the minds of Roy, Norris, and Lawrence Bitker. They observed the fragmented news broadcasts and the stagnant police press conferences, relishing their status as untraceable ghosts. The men continued to navigate the bustling streets of Los Angeles, achieving a flawless camouflage within the daily fabric of the sprawling metropolis. Their silver van remained parked in ordinary driveways, sitting mere feet away from oblivious neighbors and playing children. Inside their mundane suburban homes, the archive of Polaroid photographs and audio cassettes continued to grow in the dark. They walked past marked patrol cars and stood in line at local grocery stores, carrying the immense weight of their secret atrocities without a shred of remorse. The predators believed they had engineered the perfect crime, outsmarting a fractured legal system and a blind police force. This unchecked arrogance blinded them to the fundamental truth that such massive secrets demand a catastrophic release. The pressure of containing a hidden reality of this magnitude began to crack the disciplined facade of the operation. As the autumn winds chilled the Southern California coastline, the meticulous control that defined their sprees started to fray. The investigators remained blind to the fact that the key to breaking the case rested far outside a forensic laboratory or a coordinated search grid. The missing piece of the puzzle sat dormant within the dark, inflated ego of one of the perpetrators. The passage of time pushed the investigation toward the crucial month of November 1979. A shift in the dynamic between the two killers set the stage for a breakthrough that no detective could have ever predicted. The meticulously constructed facade of invincibility shattered not through a brilliant forensic breakthrough, but through sheer, unchecked arrogance. Roy Norris possessed a desperate need for recognition, unable to keep the magnitude of his dark accomplishments confined to his own mind. In late 1979, he sat down with an old associate, seeking to elevate his status by sharing the chilling details of the coastal disappearances. Norris spoke with a detached pride, treating the devastating loss of human life as a simple testament to his own cunning. He described the modifications of the silver van, The isolation of the San Gabriel Mountains, and the absolute control he and his partner wielded over their captives. He assumed his confidant would share his twisted admiration for the flawless execution of the crimes. Instead, the associate listened in stunned silence, recognizing the profound danger sitting right across the table. The sheer casualness of the confession terrified the listener, prompting a desperate crisis of conscience. Fearing for the safety of the community, the associate quietly slipped away and made a discreet, urgent phone call to the local authorities in Harespa Beach. The police officers who received the tip listened to a narrative that perfectly matched the terrifying reality of the missing persons reports. The fragmented pieces of the jurisdictional puzzle suddenly snapped together into a singular, horrifying picture. Detectives realized they finally had a name to attach to the phantom predators haunting the coastal highways. Law enforcement mobilized immediately, forming a coordinated task force to apprehend the suspect before another innocent life vanished into the soundproofed cargo hold. The days of invisible hunting came to an abrupt, permanent end as patrol cars converged on the unassuming suburban location. The sudden arrival of armed detectives deeply rattled Roy Norris, instantly breaking the stoic confidence he had maintained for months. Facing the intense pressure of an interrogation room, the grand illusion of a unified criminal brotherhood crumbled into self-preservation. Investigators methodically cornered the suspect, laying out the precise details provided by the informant and demanding answers for the missing women. Norris recognized the inescapable reality of his situation and quickly calculated his only path forward. To save himself from the absolute harshest penalties, he offered a full confession, turning completely against Lawrence Bittker. He agreed to guide the task force directly to the physical proof of their widespread atrocities. Detectives followed the suspect to a seemingly ordinary location, expecting to find the standard tools of a criminal enterprise. Instead, they uncovered a terrifying archive that documented the darkest depths of human cruelty. Officers opened a concealed toolbox to reveal a massive collection of instant Polaroid photographs and neatly labeled audio cassettes. The investigators laid the glossy squares across the evidence tables, staring into the terrified faces of the missing young women. The pristine interior of the soundproof van and the desolate mountain ridges served as the chilling backdrop for every image. The audio cassettes contained the undeniable auditory proof of the torment inflicted upon the victims. The investigators realized the perpetrators had operated right alongside normal society, storing this devastating collection in plain sight. The discovery confirmed that the men did not just extinguish bright futures, but actively sought to immortalize the profound suffering they caused. Armed with this insurmountable mountain of visual and auditory evidence, state prosecutors prepared to dismantle the predators in a court of law. The legal strategy relied on the sheer, undeniable reality captured on the magnetic tape reels and photographic film. Roy Norris finalized his ultimate betrayal, accepting a formal plea agreement from the district attorney. In exchange for providing crucial testimony against his former partner, the judge handed Norris a sentence of 45 years to life in a state penitentiary. This arrangement guaranteed that the state possessed the first-hand narrative required to secure the ultimate punishment for the primary architect of the spree. Lawrence Bitter refused to concede, forcing the judicial system to conduct a full, agonizing jury trial in 1981. The defense attorneys attempted to build a wall of reasonable doubt, trying to deflect the overwhelming guilt resting upon their client. However, the prosecutors possessed a weapon that no legal maneuver could counter or dismiss. They introduced the audio cassette, featuring the final moments of Shirley Ledford, forcing the courtroom to confront the pure auditory reality of the crimes. The haunting sounds echoing through the high ceilings shattered any remaining illusions of innocence. The jury members listened in stunned horror, absorbing the absolute depravity captured within the soundproof van. The presentation of this tape guaranteed a swift and decisive guilty verdict. leaving no room for leniency or doubt. The systematic destruction of 5 young lives demanded the heaviest response the state of California could offer. The presiding judge sentenced Lawrence Bittaker to death, condemning him to the strict isolation of the state execution facility. He spent the next several decades locked inside a maximum security cell, endlessly attempting to appeal the undeniable facts of his case. The state ultimately outlasted his legal maneuvers, and Bittaker met a quiet end from natural causes in the year 2019 while still residing on death row. Roy Norris never tasted freedom again, spending the remainder of his days navigating the bleak reality of the prison system he had once used as a training ground. His health steadily declined behind the concrete walls, and he passed away in a secure medical facility in the year 2020. The physical removal of both men ensured they could never again terrorize the sunlit coastal towns or the shadowed mountain canyons. The families of the victims endured a lifetime of immeasurable grief, forced to carry the weight of an empty chair at every holiday gathering. The legacy of the silver cargo van forever altered the community protocols for investigating missing persons across county lines. Detectives learned harsh, unforgiving lessons about the necessity of communication and the terrifying potential of unseen predators. The sprawling metropolis of Los Angeles moved forward, but the scars of 1979 remained permanently etched into the local history. Yet, this chilling desire to document unimaginable cruelty did not remain isolated to the California coastline. Deep in the heart of the American Midwest, another respected community member was quietly building a house of horrors that would soon shatter a quiet neighborhood. April 2, 1988, a quiet residential street in Kansas City, Missouri, shattered by the sound of breaking glass. A desperate man named Christopher Bryson leaped from the second-story window of an unassuming house. He wore nothing but a heavy dog collar around his neck. Bryson flagged down a passing neighbor, begging for immediate rescue and claiming a trusted local figure had held him against his will for an entire week. When patrol officers arrived at the property, a respected local business owner met them at the front door. The man attempted to dismiss the chaos as a simple misunderstanding. A protective sweep of the second floor, however, revealed a fortified windowless room equipped with restraints. That single, desperate jump out of a window demolished the carefully constructed public mask of a community pillar and exposed a hidden house of horrors. During the early 1980s, the Westport neighborhood of Kansas City stood as a vibrant historic district known for its eclectic atmosphere. Sodium streetlights cast long amber shadows over the brick facades of century-old buildings. Residents took immense pride in their tight-knit community, forming local groups to keep their streets safe. At the very center of this civic pride stood Robert Berdella. Berdella built a towering reputation as a proactive, involved local figure. He attended community town halls and advocated for neighborhood revitalization. Recognizing a need for localized security, he even founded the official Westport Neighborhood Watch program. Neighbors viewed him as a dedicated guardian who patrolled the very streets he called home. People trusted him without hesitation. He possessed a disarming, approachable demeanor that encouraged casual conversation. Local business owners and residents considered him a stabilizing force in an era marked by urban decay. His commitment to the community appeared absolute and unwavering. No one looked past the friendly greetings and the civic awards. This widespread public trust provided the ultimate camouflage. A significant portion of Berdella's public identity revolved around his retail store, Bob's Bizarre Bazaar. Located in the heart of Westport, the shop occupied a narrow, densely packed commercial space. The front display windows showcased an eccentric array of curiosities, drawing the eyes of curious pedestrians. Inside, the store felt like a labyrinth of oddities, smelling faintly of incense and old paper. Wooden shelves groaned under the weight of imported statues, taxidermy, and obscure occult literature. Berdella stood behind the heavy oak counter, acting as the eccentric but completely harmless proprietor. He shared facts about his unusual merchandise with regular customers and passing tourists alike. People dismissed his strange fascinations as nothing more than a quirky retail gimmick. His oddities remained confined to the shelves, or so the public believed, away from the bustling commercial district. Berdella resided in a large detached two-story house on Charlotte Street. The property sat back from the road, obscured by mature trees and overgrown bushes. White peeling paint flaked off the wooden siding, giving the structure an unassuming, weathered appearance. Heavy drapes permanently covered the windows, blocking any view from the outside world. Beyond his civic duties, Berdella cultivated a reputation as a benevolent benefactor for the lost and the struggling. Kansas City served as a crossroads for many young men seeking a fresh start or trying to escape troubled pasts. These men often faced severe financial hardship, estranged family relationships, or the harsh realities of life on the streets. They possessed hopes for stable employment, warm meals, and a quiet place to sleep. Berdella sought out these vulnerable individuals. He offered them temporary shelter inside his sprawling Charlotte Street home. He provided them with warm meals and paid them cash for performing simple odd jobs around his property. Neighbors saw different young men raking leaves or painting fences in his yard. The community praised Berdella for his incredible generosity and his willingness to give second chances. In reality, he used this calculated charity to isolate targets who lacked strong social safety nets. He understood that society often looked away from transients and runaways. The heavy wooden front door of his home represented a boundary between the public guardian and the private predator. Once a young man stepped across that threshold, the heavy locks secured their fate. The trusted neighborhood watchman had built a perfect, self-replenishing hunting ground. The grim trajectory of Robert Berdella shifted from quiet preparation to active devastation in the summer of 1984. A 19-year-old local resident named Jerry Howell became the catalyst for this descent into darkness. Jerry possessed a vibrant spirit, maintaining close ties with his family and harboring deep hopes for his future. He recently secured an engagement and worked to save money for an upcoming wedding. Friends described him as trusting, perhaps too eager to see the good in others. Jerry crossed paths with the respected shop owner during a vulnerable period of financial instability. Berdella recognized the young man's immediate need for cash and offered him a private transaction. He invited Jerry to his large house on Charlotte Street to negotiate the sale of some personal items. Jerry walked up the concrete steps and entered the shadowy foyer of the residence on July 5th. The heavy wooden door closed behind him, securing a heavy deadbolt with a loud metallic snap. Inside the dimly lit house, Berdella offered his guest a drink laced with a powerful sedative. Jerry lost consciousness, transitioning from a free man with a bright future into a captive behind closed doors. The community leader initiated a horrifying pattern of absolute control. Jerry never walked out of that house again when Jerry failed to return home. His family knew a tragedy had occurred. He never missed check-ins with his fiancée, and his sudden silence triggered immediate panic. His father rushed to the local police precinct to file an urgent missing persons report. The family distributed homemade flyers across the Westport neighborhood, plastering Jerry's face on wooden utility poles and brick walls. They knocked on doors, pleading with residents for any sliver of information regarding his whereabouts. Despite the family's desperate efforts, law enforcement treated the case with profound hesitation. Officers cited Jerry's age and financial struggles, categorizing him as a voluntary runaway. Rigid protocols of the era dictated a waiting period, bleeding away the most critical hours of the investigation. Detectives traced Jerry's last known movements, conducting brief interviews with local business owners. They possessed no concrete physical evidence, no crime scene, and no eyewitnesses to a struggle. The physical distance between the busy commercial district and the silent house on Charlotte Street created an insurmountable investigative gap. The system failed to recognize the subtle signs of a predator operating within their own jurisdiction. Jerry's loved ones remained trapped in an agonizing state of perpetual unknown. The initial police inquiry bypassed Robert Berdella. Investigators struggled to find any tangible thread connecting the missing 19-year-old to the respected Neighborhood Watch founder. Berdella carried on with his daily routine, smiling at customers and attending civic meetings while his secret remained secure upstairs. He watched the missing persons flyers weather and fade under the intense summer sun. Law enforcement hit a definitive dead end, placing the case file into a filing cabinet to gather dust. This lack of scrutiny altered Berdella's psychology. The evasion of the police erased any lingering fear of consequence. He realized that his carefully curated public persona provided absolute immunity against suspicion. The system's inability to protect Jerry Howell emboldened the shopkeeper to expand his dark ambitions. The quiet house on Charlotte Street transformed into a permanent fortress of cruelty. Berdella understood he could operate right under the noses of the very police officers he worked alongside. This unchecked arrogance set the stage for a prolonged systematic campaign of violence. Between the autumn of 1984 and the early spring of 1988, the heavy wooden door on Charlotte Street closed behind 5 additional young men. Each of these individuals entered the sprawling residential property seeking brief refuge or a meager paycheck for odd jobs. They possessed distinct identities, personal struggles, and quiet aspirations for stability. Many navigated the harsh realities of profound financial destitution or battled relentless chemical dependencies. Their transient lifestyles forced them to live at the distant margins of conventional society. They lacked fixed addresses, moving day to day between temporary shelters and the homes of distant acquaintances. This specific demographic reality created a massive vulnerability. Law enforcement agencies categorized adults without permanent residences as low-priority cases. Rigid bureaucratic protocols required local precincts to wait extended periods before taking action on classifying these men as endangered. Dispatchers dismissed desperate calls from concerned distant relatives, citing the constitutional right of adults to simply walk away from their lives. The rigid paperwork requirements meant that missing persons files often remained blank. A profound apathy infected the municipal response to these vanishing citizens. The systemic failure to recognize their intrinsic human value provided an open hunting ground for a predator. The respected neighborhood watchman capitalized on this devastating civic blind spot. The architecture of the Charlotte Street residence served as an active participant in the horrors. A narrow carpeted staircase led from the cluttered main floor to a secluded second-story landing. At the end of this dim hallway sat an unassuming bedroom with a solid core door. Heavy industrial deadbolts secured this door from the outside, transforming a standard domestic space into an inescapable vault. Inside this room, the natural light vanished behind thick blackout curtains and boarded-up window frames. A single sodium bulb cast a harsh, unforgiving glare across bare wooden floorboards. In this isolated environment, Berdella dismantled the autonomy of his captives. He deployed heavy chemical sedatives to maintain absolute control over their physical movements. The captives woke to find their environment rigid monitored and isolated from the outside world. To document this total subjugation, the homeowner utilized a standard instant Polaroid camera. The loud mechanical whir of the camera ejecting a photograph became a defining auditory nightmare for the men trapped inside. The blinding flash of the bulb illuminated their distress, capturing their darkest moments in vivid color. Berdella stood behind the lens, acting as a clinical observer rather than a participant. He sought to preserve their suffering as permanent visual trophies, alongside the immense photographic record. The respected local businessman maintained an exhaustive written archive. He purchased thick spiral-bound notebooks from a local stationery supply store, sitting at a heavy wooden desk. He filled page after page with precise, meticulous handwriting. These journals functioned as clinical ledgers of human suffering. Berdella recorded the exact dosages of various sedatives administered to his captives. He noted the precise times they lost consciousness and the exact moments they woke. The entries stripped the victims of their humanity, reducing vibrant young men to mere subjects in a deranged behavioral study. He documented his calculated efforts to break their psychological resilience. The captor manipulated their perception of time, leaving them in total darkness to disrupt their circadian rhythms. He forced them to listen to the mundane sounds of the outside world, like distant traffic and barking dogs, amplifying their agonizing proximity to freedom. The journals detailed specific methods used to extinguish their hope. He recorded their pleas for rescue and his own methodical refusals. This comprehensive cataloging revealed a predilator who viewed profound cruelty as a structured intellectual pursuit. The neat rows of ink mirrored the chilling organization of his mind. While the Polaroid collection expanded in the locked second-floor room, families across the city fought desperate, losing battles against police bureaucracy. The loved ones of the vanished men approached local precincts time and time again to demand action. Mothers and sisters presented photographs of their missing sons, pointing out that total silence defied their established behavioral patterns. Desk sergeants refused to escalate the reports to the detective division. They relied on specific jurisdictional loopholes, arguing that since the men had no fixed address in Kansas City, they could not be considered missing from that specific precinct. The rigid criteria for initiating a major search required undeniable proof of foul play or a confirmed crime scene, without a vehicle left abandoned or a witness to a physical struggle. Investigators claimed their hands remained tied by their own inflexible policies. Officers categorized the sudden disappearances as simple lifestyle choices. This institutional refusal to connect the dots isolated the families in their grief. The families conducted amateur searches, walking through dangerous alleyways and knocking on the doors of dilapidated boarding houses. They distributed homemade missing flyers just as Jerry Howell's family had done. These desperate paper pleas fluttered in the harsh winter winds, ignored by the municipal apparatus designed to protect them. The very system meant to serve the public shielded a predator through sheer administrative inertia. This systemic apathy culminated in a tragic investigative failure involving a young man named Todd Stoops. Todd vanished into the Charlotte Street residence, leaving behind a frantic network of concerned friends who refused to accept his sudden silence. They retraced his final known movements, gathering fragments of information from the Westport Commercial District. Their relentless amateur detective work produced a specific actionable tip. They informed local authorities that Todd had recent associations with the eccentric owner of Bob's Bizarre Bazaar. Armed with this direct lead, 2 uniformed officers walked up the concrete steps of the Charlotte Street property. They knocked heavily on the front door, standing mere feet away from the hidden horrors on the second floor. Berdella opened the door with a calm, disarming smile. The officers stated their purpose, and casual conversation turned toward the missing young man. The homeowner leaned against the doorframe and provided a rehearsed, fabricated alibi. He claimed Todd had stopped by for a brief visit but departed on foot to seek employment in another state. The officers accepted this narrative without a single follow-up question. They lacked the aggressive curiosity required to demand a protective sweep of the premises. They turned their backs on the property and walked away, sealing Todd's fate. The sight of the police cruiser pulling away from his curb altered Berdella's operational psychology. Surviving a direct inquiry from law enforcement validated his absolute belief in his own superior intellect. He realized the badge-wearing authorities viewed him exactly as he desired, a quirky, harmless pillar of the local community. This successful deception eliminated his need for extreme caution. The predator began to treat the horrifying physical evidence of his crimes with terrifying nonchalance. He stopped hiding his clinical logbooks in secure safes. Instead, he tossed the spiral-bound journals into open desk drawers alongside mundane utility bills and community council agendas. He placed the hundreds of developing Polaroid photographs into standard shoeboxes and ordinary manila envelopes. These containers sat in plain sight on dusty bookshelves, blending into the massive hoarding of oddities and imported statues. The visual proof of profound agony rested right next to taxidermy displays and incense burners. This careless integration of the monstrous into the mundane demonstrated his complete detachment from reality. He operated with the absolute certainty that no one would breach the threshold of his private sanctuary. The community continued to praise his civic efforts, unaware of the dark archives multiplying inside his home. The calendar pages turned, marking the passage of 4 desolate years. The heavy drapes on the Charlotte Street windows remained drawn, hiding the relentless cycle of captivity from the bright Kansas City summers and frigid Midwestern winters. The local neighborhood watch program continued to flourish under Berdella's dedicated leadership. He attended local meetings, discussing property values and street safety, while his own residents held the most profound danger in the entire city. The physical volume of evidence inside the house reached staggering proportions. Over 300 distinct Polaroid images now documented the grim reality of the vanishing young men. The journals contained thousands of handwritten words detailing specific chemical experiments and behavioral observations. The distinct scent of heavy cleaning chemicals seeped into the wooden floorboards of the second story. Berdella refined his methods of control, maintaining his dual life with chilling precision. He stood behind his shop counter day after day, ringing up sales and smiling at tourists. The massive disconnect between the public guardian and the private captor stretched to a breaking point. The sheer scale of his hidden operation created an unsustainable environment. A single overlooked detail became inevitable, setting the stage for a desperate, unprecedented confrontation. The second floor of the Charlotte Street house contained a small, stifling bedroom. A single window faced the quiet Kansas City street below. Heavy wooden boards covered this glass to prevent any view of the outside world. On April 2, 1988, Christopher Bryson recognized a sliver of opportunity. The captor exited the room for a brief moment, leaving a heavy deadbolt unlashed. Bryson harnessed a desperate surge of adrenaline. He wore only a heavy metal dog collar around his neck. He pushed past the wooden barricade and threw his body through the second-story glass frame. Gravity pulled him toward the front lawn. The glass shattered upon impact with the earth. He hit the solid ground and ran toward the street. He flagged down a passing neighbor. The neighbor saw the metal collar and heard the frantic pleas for immediate rescue. Patrol vehicles arrived at the property moments later. The initial public facade held for a brief conversation at the front door. Then the entire deception collapsed into chaos. Detectives secured the perimeter of the Charlotte Street residence and obtained a comprehensive search warrant from a local judge. A specialized evidence response team breached the heavy front door. They stood in the cramped, cluttered foyer. They walked past the imported statues and obscure taxidermy on the first floor. They climbed the narrow, carpeted stairs toward the darkness. The scent of heavy chemical cleaners intensified with each step. They entered the second-floor bedroom. The unseen horror materialized before their eyes. Investigators opened standard cardboard shoeboxes sitting on a dusty wooden shelf. They pulled out over 300 instant Polaroid photographs. The images provided absolute, undeniable visual proof of the missing men. The harsh flash of the camera bulb illuminated the faces of the vanished citizens. The photos depicted individuals in profound states of distress and restraint. Alongside the boxes, detectives located the thick spiral-bound notebooks. The ink detailed precise chronological timelines of captivity. The respected shop owner had cataloged a nightmare. The scope of the investigation expanded to the property exterior. The backyard sat enclosed by a weathered wooden privacy fence. Overgrown bushes lined the property edges, shielding the earth from prying eyes. Forensic teams mapped the soil in a meticulous grid pattern. They initiated an excavation of the dirt near the fence line. Shovels struck solid objects buried beneath the surface. The excavation yielded a grim discovery. Investigators uncovered the buried skulls of 2 missing men. The detailed documentation inside the house revealed the ultimate fate of the other victims. Berdella separated the remains of his captives inside his walls. He placed the evidence in standard heavy-duty refuse bags. He carried these bags to the street curb. The weekly municipal trash collection vehicles transported the evidence to massive public landfills. The community realized a terrifying truth. The man who organized their neighborhood watch had turned their ordinary sanitation system into an unwitting accomplice. The friendly local merchant stood exposed as a master architect of human suffering. The interrogation room offered no avenues for escape. Robert Berdella sat across a metal table from seasoned detectives. He faced a monumental stack of physical evidence he possessed no viable legal defense. His own meticulous handwriting trapped him in a corner. His vast collection of instant photographs eliminated any possibility of a plausible denial. The rigid legal system prepared to pursue the maximum ultimate penalty allowed by law. Prosecutors built a definitive case based on the extensive ledgers found on the dusty shelves. To avoid an execution sentence, the former neighborhood watchman agreed to a comprehensive plea deal. He provided a formal confession to the authorities. He claimed direct responsibility for the disappearances and subsequent ends of 6 distinct young men. The detailed admission confirmed the worst fears of the families who had searched for years. The predator traded the truth for his own continued survival. The Jackson County Courthouse scheduled the final proceeding for December 1988. The presiding judge reviewed the staggering catalog of visual and written evidence. The court delivered a definitive and final sentence. Berdella received a term of life in prison without the possibility of parole. This verdict offered a strict measure of legal justice. Yet, the outcome left the Kansas City community fractured and traumatized. The horrific revelations forced local law enforcement to confront their own massive institutional failures. The rigid bureaucratic protocols that ignored transients and marginalized individuals faced intense public scrutiny. Citizens realized that basic police curiosity could have prevented years of profound agony. The systemic apathy that protected a predator demanded an immediate reckoning. The police department implemented new investigative standards for missing adults. The system promised to reform, carrying the heavy burden of the lives lost to administrative delays. The families of the vanished men finally possessed answers, though the reality brought unimaginable pain. The concrete walls of the Missouri State Penitentiary stripped away the eccentric merchant persona. The former community leader vanished into the rigid, monotonous routine of the prison system. He spent his days in total isolation from the public he once deceived. His time behind bars proved brief in 1992. A fatal heart attack ended his life within the medical wing of the facility. The Charlotte Street house remained an empty, boarded-up shell in the Westport neighborhood. The structure stood as a silent monument to a predator who hid in plain sight. City officials ordered the demolition of the property to erase the physical reminder of the trauma. The empty lot offered a small measure of peace to a scarred community. The case demonstrated the terrifying power of a trusted public mask. While this Kansas City shop owner documented his horrific experiments on instant film, another respected authority figure across the globe chose a different medium to capture his own unthinkable betrayals. In late 1985, Soviet investigators sat in a darkened room. the heavy metallic clicking of an 8mm film projector cutting through the absolute silence. The flickering black and white footage illuminating the smoke-filled air was incomprehensible, displaying a highly decorated teacher methodically documenting his own horrifying acts of violence against local youths. For the detectives, this reel was not just undeniable evidence of a predator who had evaded capture for decades, but a devastating betrayal of the public trust. The silent film captured a grim reality that completely dismantled the state illusion of a safe utopian society. To understand the magnitude of this betrayal, one must first examine the rigid landscape of Nevinominsk in the 1960s. This industrial center situated in the North Caucasus region of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic was built upon strict conformity and unwavering loyalty to the state. Heavy dust from chemical manufacturing plants coated the uniform concrete apartment blocks where working-class families lived side by side. The geography of the city offered few avenues for recreation, pushing restless boys to seek adventure in the vast imposing forest bordering the town limits. Life here operated strictly by the collective design of the ruling party. Citizens trusted the authorities without hesitation, believing entirely in the protective embrace of the Soviet apparatus. Any deviation from the norm drew immediate scrutiny from neighborhood committees and local police. Within this highly controlled environment, genuine danger seemed impossible. State propaganda continuously reassured the public that sinister elements existed exclusively in the capitalist West. The streets of Nevinominsk felt like the safest place on earth to raise a family. At the absolute center of this community trust stood Anatoly Slivko. He held the prestigious title of Honored Teacher of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, a designation that carried immense social power. Slivko directed the Cherted Youth Club, a state-sponsored organization occupying a prominent building near the center of town. The facility featured classrooms filled with outdoor survival gear, political literature, and the constant hum of ambitious youth. Slivko possessed official membership in the Communist Party, wrapping himself in an impenetrable shield of political respectability. Local party officials frequently praised his dedication to shaping the next generation of Soviet citizens. Parents viewed him as a surrogate father, especially for boys coming from fractured homes or those struggling with discipline. He demanded absolute obedience from his students, enforcing a strict military-style hierarchy that resonated perfectly with the era. Slivko wore rows of state medals across his chest during public parades, cementing his image as a hero of the people. No one questioned the intensive, one-on-one time he spent with the boys under his command. The boys who joined Chergid considered themselves part of an elite fraternity. They spent their afternoons sewing specialized uniforms, studying topographical maps, and preparing for grueling mountain expeditions. For a teenage boy in Nevinominsk, earning the approval of the decorated director meant everything. They memorized knot-tying techniques, practiced first aid, and dreamed of leading their own wilderness excursions. Many of these youths lacked strong male role models at home, making them particularly eager to please the imposing teacher. Slivko cultivated this dependency, isolating the most eager and vulnerable members from their peers. He framed this isolation as a special privilege, telling chosen students they possessed unique potential. The boys kept journals, documenting their progress and expressing their profound gratitude toward their mentor. Their families felt an overwhelming sense of pride watching their sons transform into disciplined young pioneers. Beneath the surface of this patriotic duty, the director was meticulously evaluating each boy, identifying those whose absence might go unnoticed or unexplained. The dark reality of this mentorship first fractured the community in the year 1964 with a boy named Kolya Doroshev. Kolya possessed a vibrant spirit eager to prove his worth on the rugged trails outside Nevinominsk. He spent weeks preparing for what his director described as a specialized outdoor survival experiment. On the designated day, Cellphone led the youth far beyond the familiar paths, hiking deep into an isolated section of the dense forest. The terrain grew steep and unforgiving, cutting off any direct line of sight to the town below. The thick canopy of pine trees blocked out the afternoon sun, casting long, disorienting shadows across the forest floor. Trusting his mentor implicitly, Kolya followed directions without hesitation in that remote clearing, miles away from his family. The boy faced a nightmare he could never have anticipated. The trusted educator initiated his grim experiment, ensuring the youth never left the woods. Kolya Drishev met a brutal, permanent end at the hands of the man he idolized. Cellphone then systematically disposed of the evidence, leaving the silent forest to guard his terrible secret. When Kolya failed to return home, a paralyzing fear gripped his mother. She rushed to the local militia station, desperate for a comprehensive search effort. The rigid protocols of the Soviet law enforcement system immediately failed the grieving family. Detectives classified the absence as a standard runaway case, refusing to allocate resources for a specialized search. Investigators faced a massive ideological blind spot, refusing to entertain the possibility of a predator operating within a socialist society. Due to his esteemed public standing, authorities did not even subject the director to a formal interview regarding the vanished boy. Cellphone visited the devastated mother, offering hollow comfort, while masking his own complete lack of remorse. The bureaucratic classification of the event provided the predator with absolute immunity. Cellphone realized that his Communist Party membership and state medals functioned as an impenetrable armor against police suspicion. This successful deception emboldened him, validating his twisted belief in his own supreme intelligence. The tragic loss of Kolya Drishev marked the genesis of a 21-year nightmare where the Chergid Club functioned entirely as a hidden hunting ground. In the years following the disappearance of Kolya Drishev, Anatoly Cellphone perfected a grim routine within the walls of the Chergid Club. He utilized the state-sponsored facility as a screening ground, observing the boys during their knot-tying drills and uniform inspections. The director targeted youths who displayed blind obedience and lacked strong parental oversight at home. He isolated these children by offering them prestigious positions within the pioneer group. The selected boys received special assignments, elevating their status among their peers and deepening their reliance on their commander. Cellphone demanded absolute silence regarding these hidden tasks, framing the secrecy as a vital component of their survival training. He convinced the youths that enduring extreme physical trials would prepare them for military service and glory within the Soviet system. The parents of these chosen boys felt a profound sense of pride, blind to the terrifying reality hidden behind the patriotic rhetoric. They watched their sons march through the streets of Nevenomyssk in crisp uniforms, trusting the celebrated educator with their lives, shielded by his Communist Party membership and rows of state medals. The predator moved through the town without restriction, mapping out his next private excursions into the wilderness. To document his twisted exercises, the director secured a state-issued 8mm film camera through his official club budget. He told the local administration he required the equipment to record the physical fitness routines of the youth pioneers. Instead, this heavy mechanical device became the focal point of his hidden atrocities. Cellphone packed the camera alongside ropes and medical supplies, loading the gear into a heavy canvas rucksack. He then marched his chosen victims into the dense, isolated woods bordering the Kuban River. The trek required miles of walking away from the industrial hum of the city, plunging the boy and his mentor into total isolation. The thick canopy of oak and ash trees formed a dark ceiling, blocking out the daylight and ensuring absolute privacy. In this remote setting, the director instructed the youths to participate in specialized resistance tests involving loss of consciousness. The boys complied without hesitation, trusting the medals on his chest and the authority in his voice. As the youths fell into the trap, The whirring sound of the 8mm camera captured every agonizing moment. He recorded these fatal sequences with cold precision, establishing a visual library of terror that no one in the world knew existed. Between the year 1964 and the early 1980s, more boys vanished into the dense forests of the North Caucasus. Panicked mothers and fathers flooded the local militia stations holding worn photographs of their missing sons. They begged the authorities to launch organized search parties in the mountains. The Soviet law enforcement apparatus responded with rigid indifference and suffocating bureaucracy. According to state ideology, continuous patterns of violence represented a capitalist disease that could not physically exist in a socialist utopia. Because of this unwavering political doctrine, detectives refused to connect the missing children to a single source. Investigators filed each disappearance in separate, isolated folders, labeling them all as independent runaways, seeking work in distant cities. Police commanders ordered their subordinates to close the inquiries in haste to maintain positive crime statistics for the regional party bosses. When families pointed out that all the missing youths attended the exact same pioneer group, investigators dismissed the connection without question. The local police chief even reprimanded one desperate mother for daring to question the integrity of a highly decorated teacher. The systemic refusal to acknowledge the possibility of a serial predator created a massive blind spot, allowing the director to continue his hunting routine without a single police interview. The investigation stalled further when detectives pursued a series of false leads generated by local rumors. A citizen reported seeing a vagrant near the train station, prompting police to spend weeks interrogating unhoused individuals across the railway network. Detectives wasted vital resources chasing these dead ends, focusing their attention on outsiders and transient workers. During this same period, several boys from the Chergid Club returned from the woods bearing strange marks and exhibiting deep psychological trauma. One teenager stumbled back to his apartment with severe bruising around his neck, weeping in his bedroom. His parents contacted the school board demanding an explanation for the physical injuries. Slivko arrived at their doorstep the following morning in his full military dress uniform. He stated that the boy had suffered a minor accident while practicing an advanced rock climbing technique. The director then accused the teenager of displaying cowardice and failing to uphold the strong values of the pioneer organization. Intimidated by the official authority of the party member, the parents dropped their complaint and forced their son to apologize. The local militia never even received a report of the incident, as school officials handled the matter internally to protect the reputation of the club. This rigid protocol of protecting party elites silenced the surviving victims and provided the predator with absolute immunity. While police filed away the runaway reports, the celebrated educator expanded his hidden collection of horrors in the shadows of his own office. He possessed a private locked room within the Chergid Club building, a space forbidden to all students and staff. Inside this dark sanctuary, he maintained a chilling archive of his fatal expeditions. Slivko collected the shoes of the vanished boys, polishing the leather and lining them up on a wooden shelf in perfect chronological order. Beside the footwear, he stacked the 8mm film reels in neat metallic canisters. The director spent his evenings alone in this room, threading the delicate celluloid strips through a heavy mechanical projector. He sat in the darkness, the clicking of the machine echoing off the concrete walls, watching his victims meet their end again and again. He categorized the footage with handwritten labels, detailing the specific dates and resistance techniques used during each encounter. This meticulous cataloging demonstrated an overwhelming arrogance and a total detachment from human empathy. He believed his position within the political apparatus rendered him untouchable, trusting that no Soviet investigator would ever dare demand the key to his private domain. Every morning, he locked the heavy wooden door, pinned his state medals to his lapel, and stepped out to greet a new classroom of trusting children. The community continued to revere him, blind to the visual evidence of a monster sitting just feet away from their sons. The turning point arrived in the summer of the year 1985 with the sudden disappearance of 13-year-old Sergei Pavlov. Sergei vanished without a trace, leaving his bicycle abandoned near the edge of the dense woods bordering the town. Local militia commanders prepared to file another standard runaway report, citing the usual narrative of a restless youth seeking a new life in the city. A young, tenacious investigator reviewing the regional archives refused to accept this bureaucratic dismissal. This detective began cross-referencing the files of missing boys dating back 2 decades. A chilling, undeniable pattern emerged from the yellowed pages of the police reports. Every single vanished boy shared a direct documented affiliation with the Chergid Youth Organization. The investigator realized that the esteemed director stood at the exact center of a vast, terrifying web of missing children. To accuse an honored teacher of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic bordered on political suicide within the rigid local government. The detective bypassed the local party bosses, taking his findings to a higher regional prosecutor to demand a formal inquiry. He presented a meticulous timeline proving Slivko was the last person seen with Sergei Pavlov. Overcoming massive systemic resistance, the investigator finally secured a search warrant for the youth club. Armed with official authorization, a small team of plainclothes officers approached the concrete facade of the state-sponsored facility. They prepared to breach a sanctuary that had remained unquestioned and unexamined for 21 years. The officers entered the Chergid building after hours, their footsteps echoing down the long linoleum-tiled main corridor. They bypassed the classrooms filled with topographical maps, compasses, and neatly folded pioneer uniforms. At the very end of the hallway stood the heavy oak door leading to the private office of the director. The investigators broke the lock, stepping into a space dominated by state portraits and walls lined with commendation plaques. The room felt cold and obsessively organized, reflecting the strict, disciplined public persona of the celebrated educator. Behind a heavy wooden desk, detectives noticed a large structural anomaly built directly into the concrete wall. A heavy steel padlock secured a reinforced wooden compartment hidden from casual view. Officers retrieved heavy iron pry bars from their vehicle, shattering the steel clasp and pulling open the heavy wooden doors. Inside the dark windowless recess, a Maghreb collection awaited the investigative team. Row upon row of small, polished leather shoes sat perfectly aligned on wooden shelves. Detectives recognized the exact footwear described in the missing person reports, spanning 2 decades. The officers stood in stunned silence, staring at the physical trophies of vanished children. The horrific scale of the deception materialized before their eyes, proving the town hero was a monster hiding in plain sight. Beside the neat rows of shoes, the officers discovered a stack of heavy metal canisters containing pristine rolls of celluloid film. Investigators confiscated the metal canisters and transported the evidence back to the regional militia headquarters. The detectives commandeered a windowless briefing room, setting up an 8mm mechanical projector in the center of the space. They threaded the fragile celluloid strips through the metal sprockets, powering on the harsh halogen bulb. The heavy metallic click of the machine cut through the absolute silence of the room, throwing a flickering rectangle of light against the white plaster wall. The footage they witnessed eradicated any remaining doubt regarding the fate of the missing boys. In stark black and white clarity, the projector displayed the esteemed educator marching youths into the isolated forest. The camera documented his fatal experiments with clinical, uninterrupted precision. The visual evidence showcased a predator stripping away the lives of his trusting students while wearing the uniform of a state hero. Detectives watched the respected teacher orchestrate the absolute terror of his victims, capturing their final moments for his private amusement. The silent, Flickering images prove beyond any doubt the identity of a killer who had manipulated the entire Soviet apparatus. For the gathered officers, the reel represented a devastating, visceral betrayal of the public trust. The footage completely dismantled the state illusion of a safe utopian society free from the horrors of serial predators. The undeniable visual proof transformed the untouchable party member into the most documented monster in Soviet history. The unearthing of the 8mm films instantly stripped Anatoly Slivko of his impenetrable political armor. Confronted with the irrefutable visual evidence playing on a loop, the director abandoned his righteous facade. He provided a full, emotionless confession detailing the loss of 7 specific youths spanning a 21-year period. The revelation sent a massive shockwave through the highest levels of the Soviet government. Terrifying officials who had praised his work, the trial of the year 1986 commenced under immense public scrutiny, shattering the blind trust of the Nevnaya community. The courtroom proceedings exposed the massive systemic failures, highlighting how rigid political ideology provided a shield for a sadistic predator. Bereaved families wept in the gallery as prosecutors detailed the exact bureaucratic loopholes that allowed the director to evade questioning. The state tribunal acted swiftly to erase the embarrassment brought upon their political apparatus. Judges officially stripped the predator of his honored teacher title, revoking his state medals and expelling him from the Communist Party. The court sentenced him to death, aiming to close a dark chapter that contradicted their utopian narrative. The undeniable film evidence forced Soviet law enforcement to finally acknowledge the reality of serial predators operating within their own borders. Detectives across the nation began rewriting investigative protocols to prevent another tragedy of this magnitude. The condemned man spent his final years confined to a harsh state prison, initiating a lengthy and desperate appeals process. He petitioned the highest courts, attempting to leverage his decades of community service to commute his sentence to a labor camp. The Soviet judicial system rejected every single appeal, finalizing his fate in the year 1989. Guards escorted the former educator to a soundproof execution chamber deep within the penitentiary. Anatoly Slivko met his absolute end by a single gunshot, concluding a legacy defined by profound deception and shattered trust. The town of Nevinnomysk struggled to heal, forever scarred by the realization that their children fell victim to a man wearing a mask of supreme respectability. The chilling power of a single photograph or recorded film can expose the darkest truths hidden within any society. Far from the rigid industrial towns of the Soviet Union, another terrifying discovery awaited law enforcement on the opposite side of the world. Across the sprawling, open interstate highways of America, a transient predator was utilizing a camera to capture a victim's final moments of terror. Among the possessions of an arrested long-haul trucker, investigators would soon discover a deeply haunting photograph that remains infamous in true crime history. Inside an evidence room, investigators sift through the seized belongings of a transient long-haul trucker. Amidst the mundane travel receipts and maps, they uncover a photograph that will permanently haunt the history of criminal investigation. The image captures a terrified teenage girl standing in the shadows of a decaying, abandoned barn. She is forced to wear a black dress and matching heels, her arms raised in a defensive posture. The sheer panic etched across her face makes one thing absolutely clear: she knows exactly what is about to happen as the camera shutter clicks. This single piece of photographic film preserves a moment of profound psychological terror, becoming the crucial link between a vanished runaway and a shadow roaming the interstate highway system. Pasadena, Texas, sits near the heavy industrial zones of the Gulf Coast, a town defined by sprawling oil refineries and the constant hum of chemical plants. In the early months of the year 1990, 14-year-old Regina Walters calls this working-class enclave her home. Regina is a bright teenager known for her resilient spirit, yet she carries the heavy burden of a turbulent home life. She seeks solace in the company of her boyfriend, Ricky Lee Jones, a young man who shares her desire for a fresh start. The couple spends their evenings walking the cracked sidewalks of Pasadena, dreaming of a life far removed from the suffocating environment of their youth. They long for freedom, unaware of the grim realities waiting beyond the city limits. Regina holds on to the profound hope that a different state might offer a path to stability and peace. She packs a small bag with her few cherished belongings, preparing to leave the only world she has ever known. Ricky does the same, convinced that their combined determination will shield them from the uncertainties of the road. Together, they make the fateful decision to step out into the vast expanse of the American landscape. They plan to rely on the perceived kindness of passing motorists to carry them toward a better future. Their departure goes largely unnoticed in the dense industrial smog of the Texas coast, leaving them vulnerable to the elements. During this era, the American interstate highway system exists as a sprawling, poorly monitored network of asphalt and concrete. Thousands of miles of desolate roads stretch across state lines, connecting bustling metropolises to isolated rural towns. The highways are arteries of commerce dominated by the constant roar of 18-wheelers transporting goods from coast to coast. For runaways seeking a quick exit, these long stretches of road represent an accessible escape route. However, the sheer scale of the interstate creates an environment where anonymity thrives, allowing transient individuals to slip completely off the radar of local law enforcement. Police jurisdictions end abruptly at county and state lines, creating a fragmented system of communication that leaves massive blind spots. There are no cellular phones, no ubiquitous security cameras, and no digital tracking systems to monitor the movement of passing vehicles. A person can vanish from a rest stop in Texas and find themselves 1,000 miles away by sunrise. Regina and Ricky stand on the gravel shoulders of these highways, extending their thumbs toward the endless stream of passing headlights. They are simply teenagers searching for a better tomorrow, completely blind to the fact that the open road is an active domain for those with dark intentions. The vast asphalt corridors serve as the perfect camouflage for predators who use the guise of legitimate employment to mask their true nature. The journey toward a new life takes a definitive, fatal turn when Regina and Ricky accept a ride from a long-haul trucker named Robert Ben Roes. The massive 18-wheeler pulls onto the dirt shoulder, its heavy diesel engine idling with a deep mechanical growl. Rhodes projects the image of a helpful, weary traveler, offering the cold teenagers a warm sanctuary inside his expansive truck, grateful for the shelter. The young couple climbs into the passenger side, pulling their bags into the cabin. The heavy metal door slams shut, sealing them inside an environment designed for ultimate control. Behind the driver's seat lies the sleeper cab, a space traditionally used for rest during cross-country hauls. Rhodes, however, has secretly modified this area into a mobile chamber of horrors. The walls of the sleeper are reinforced, equipped with surgical instruments, restraints, and heavy soundproofing materials to absorb any cries for help. The cab is windowless in the back, plunging the interior into a claustrophobic darkness the moment the curtains are drawn. As the air brakes release and the truck merges back onto the highway, the teenagers cross a point of no return. They are trapped inside a rolling fortress, completely at the mercy of a man who uses the endless ribbon of the interstate to cover his tracks. The heavy vibration of the tires on the pavement masks the unfolding nightmare within the cabin. The illusion of a safe ride shatters rapidly as Roades reveals his true intentions. He isolates the two teenagers within the confined space of the truck, utilizing his physical advantage and prepared restraints to overpower them. Ricky is the immediate obstacle to the trucker, marking him as the first target. The young man who promised to protect Regina meets a sudden permanent end in the darkened cab of the moving 18-wheeler. Roades navigates the vehicle through the deep south, pulling off the main highway into the dense, marshy backwaters of Mississippi. He stops in a remote, overgrown area, hauling the remains of Ricky out of the cab and discarding them into the thick brush. For 18 agonizing years, the identity of this young man remains an absolute mystery, his earthly remains resting unidentified until the year 2008. With Ricky gone, Regina is left entirely alone in the clutches of a methodical predator. She is forced to endure the agonizing realization that her protector is gone and she is completely isolated from the outside world. Rhodes climbs back into the driver's seat, shifts the massive transmission into gear, and accelerates down the asphalt. This abduction initiates a horrifying timeline where the truck becomes a moving prison, transporting Regina across multiple state lines. Every passing mile pulls her further away from any hope of rescue, swallowed by the vast, unmonitored expanses of the American highway. Inside the windowless sleeper cab, the days merge into a continuous, disorienting nightmare of highway vibration and diesel fumes. Regina remains trapped in a mobile prison that crosses state lines with absolute impunity. The primary hurdle for law enforcement during this period stems from the extreme mobility of long-haul truckers and rigid bureaucratic protocols. At the local police department in Pasadena, Texas, the initial missing persons report lands on a crowded desk. Officers classify Regina as a voluntary runaway due to her history and her known departure with her boyfriend. This exact classification creates an impenetrable legal barrier for any rapid interstate pursuit. Without a physical crime scene, signs of a struggle, or a ransom demand, the local department lacks the legal authority to escalate the case to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The National Crime Information Center database exists, but its entry rules for teenagers require definitive proof of abduction before triggering a national alert. A massive communication gap paralyzes the system, isolating local police stations from highway patrol units operating on the interstates. A Texas investigator might send a teletype message to neighboring counties, but that piece of paper stops at the state border. The rigid jurisdiction rules dictate that a crime must be tied to a specific geographic location. Roades exploits this exact loophole, turning the vast expanse of the American highway into a massive jurisdiction-free void. He drives a commercial vehicle through agricultural checkpoints and way stations without drawing a single suspicious glance from authorities. As the days stretch into weeks, the investigation back in Texas hits a concrete wall. Detectives conduct standard interviews with friends and family members, searching for any hint of a destination. The responses yield nothing but vague dreams of a better life somewhere out west. Investigators file the paperwork into a cabinet, bound by protocol that dictates waiting for the teenager to make a phone call home. They possess zero physical evidence to suggest a crime has occurred, leaving them blind to the horror unfolding on the road. This lack of coordination means highway patrol officers across the country have no reason to inspect the sleeper cabs of passing commercial trucks. A state trooper in Louisiana or Arkansas might pull over a massive 18-wheeler for a broken taillight or a speeding violation. The officer checks the driver license and the cargo logbook, failing to realize a captive teenager sits bound just inches behind the driver's seat. The heavy soundproofing installed by Roades ensures that no cry for help ever reaches the ears of law enforcement during these routine traffic stops. The predator sits in the driver's seat, projecting the calm demeanor of a hard-working citizen while relishing his deception. He maintains his professional trucking schedule, delivering commercial goods from city to city while keeping his secret hidden in the back. The systemic failure to recognize the threat of transient criminals allows this man to operate in plain sight of state authorities. Inside the reinforced cabin, the psychological torment inflicts as much damage as the physical restraints. Regina endures the continuous deafening roar of the heavy engine and the blinding flashes of sodium streetlights cutting through the curtain seams. She senses the truck slowing down for rest stops and toll booths, listening to the muffled voices of gas station attendants and police officers. The proximity to safety creates an agonizing form of psychological torture, breaking down her hope with every passing mile. Roades orchestrates every aspect of her existence, stripping away her autonomy while navigating the endless asphalt corridors. He uses the isolation of the sleeper cab to condition his captive, enforcing strict compliance through profound terror. The young teenager from Texas is cut off from her past life, held hostage by a man who views her as a mere possession. During this cross-country route, the truck bypasses major cities and sticks to desolate stretches of highway. The tires hum against the pavement, carrying the vehicle further into the cold, unforgiving landscape of the American Midwest. Rhodes checks his side mirrors, watching the white lines of the highway blur together into a hypnotic pattern. He knows the authorities are looking for a runaway, not a captive hidden inside a rolling fortress. The predator feels a deep sense of invincibility, convinced that his intricate mobile setup makes him untouchable by the fragmented justice system. The journey takes a chilling detour when Roade steers his heavy truck off the interstate and into the rural heartland of Illinois. He navigates the vehicle down a series of narrow, unpaved county roads, far removed from the busy truck stops and way stations. The landscape flattens into endless acres of barren agricultural fields, devoid of any visible farmhouses or passing traffic. Heavy gray clouds hang low in the winter sky, casting a bleak, suffocating shadow over the dormant farmland. Roades brings the 18-wheeler to a halt near an isolated, decaying structure standing alone in the frost-covered grass. The abandoned barn features weather-beaten wooden siding, a sagging roof, and large sliding doors that hang on rusted iron tracks. The nearest paved road sits miles away, ensuring absolute silence save for the freezing wind howling through the cracks in the timber. Rhodes cuts the diesel engine, plunging the cabin into an eerie quiet before forcing Regina out of the sleeper berth. The harsh winter air bites at her skin as her boots hit the frozen dirt of the desolate property. He marches her toward the gaping entrance of the barn, pushing aside the heavy wooden doors to reveal a dark, dust-filled interior. The inside of the structure smells of damp earth and rotting wood, lit only by thin slivers of gray daylight piercing through the roof. This remote agricultural ruin provides the predator with a secluded stage for his final act of psychological domination. Inside the freezing shadows of the barn, Roade retrieves his camera and begins setting up his MAB photo shoot. He forces Regina to put on a specific outfit he keeps in his truck. A black dress paired with matching high heels. The young girl stands barefoot on the cold dirt floor before stepping into the oversized shoes, her body trembling from both the dropping temperature and profound fear. Roades raises the camera to his eye, framing his captive against the backdrop of an old rusted animal trough and splintered wooden beams. Regina crosses her arms and raises her shoulders in a defensive posture, her wide eyes staring straight into the glass lens of the camera, the mechanical shutter clicks capturing a raw, indelible moment of absolute terror on photographic film. She understands the grim reality of her situation, realizing that this desolate barn is the final stop on her horrifying journey. Soon after securing these visual trophies, Roades initiates his final attack, forcing a brutal permanent end to the life of the resilient teenager from Texas. He extinguishes her bright future, leaving her remains concealed within the dark corners of the decaying agricultural structure. The predator gathers his photographic equipment, walks back out into the freezing wind, and climbs up into the driver's seat of his massive truck. He turns the ignition key, bringing the loud diesel engine back to life before pulling away from the abandoned property. Roades merges his vehicle back onto the interstate. blending into the flow of commercial traffic as if nothing terrible has just transpired. He updates his federal driving logbook with a steady hand, confident that the isolated ruins of Illinois will keep his dark secret hidden forever. The vast expanse of the Arizona desert stretches out in every direction, defined by cracked earth and towering saguaro cacti baking beneath a relentless sun. Interstate 10 cuts through this barren landscape like a straight gray scar, offering a monotonous route for cross-country travelers. On the morning of April 1st, 1990, this desolate stretch of highway becomes the stage for an unexpected confrontation. An Arizona Highway Patrol trooper drives his cruiser through the eastbound lanes, his eyes scanning the endless miles of asphalt for routine traffic violations. The flat terrain offers zero visual cover, making any anomaly visible from miles away. Up ahead, the trooper spots a massive 18-wheel tractor trailer stopped on the gravel shoulder. The hazard lights of the commercial vehicle blink in a steady, constant pulse, signaling distress. The heavy truck rests inches away from the active lane of traffic, creating a significant hazard for passing motorists. Standard protocol dictates that the officer must perform a welfare check on the stranded driver. The trooper steers his patrol cruiser onto the dirt shoulder, positioning his vehicle directly behind the massive trailer. He shifts his car into park and steps out into the dry, sweltering heat of the desert air. His boots crunch against the loose gravel as he walks the immense length of the steel trailer. He expects to find a frustrated trucker dealing with a blown tire or an overheated engine. Instead, he walks directly into a nightmare hiding in plain sight. The trooper approaches the driver's side door and looks up toward the elevated windows of the cab. A sudden blur of frantic movement inside the glass catches his immediate attention. He steps back, adjusting his angle to peer through the glare of the desert sun. A woman is thrashing with immense force inside the cabin. Her wrists bound by heavy metal handcuffs, she possesses zero clothing, her body bearing the obvious marks of physical distress. Her face contorts in absolute terror as she hurls herself toward the window, screaming for help through the thick glass. Behind her, the massive frame of Robert Ben Rhodes attempts to drag her back into the darkened sleeper berth. The meticulously maintained illusion of a respectable commercial driver shatters in an instant. The trooper draws his service weapon, leveling the barrel directly at the cab while shouting firm commands. He orders Rhodes to release the captive and exit the vehicle with his hands raised. The sheer authority of the armed officer paralyzes the predator, stripping him of his total control over the environment. Rhodes complies, stepping down from the elevated cab and surrendering to the law enforcement official. Backup units arrive minutes later, securing the perimeter and providing immediate medical sanctuary for the traumatized captive. This sharp observation by a single diligent officer ends a cross-country reign of terror. The rolling fortress of the interstate predator is finally breached. Law enforcement officers impound the massive commercial vehicle, towing it to a secure holding facility for a comprehensive forensic teardown. Detectives secure the necessary search warrants, granting them full access to the darkest corners of the sleeper cab. They dismantle the custom-built soundproofing panels and catalog the terrifying array of restraints and surgical instruments hidden within the walls. The sheer volume of physical evidence reveals the deep, calculated nature of the transient predator. During this exhaustive search of his personal property, investigators locate a collection of photographic materials. The detectives process the seized film rolls, bringing the hidden visual records into the glaring light of the police station. One specific photograph emerges from the darkroom chemical trays, plunging the investigative team into a heavy, oppressive silence. The image shows a young, terrified girl standing in a black dress inside a decaying agricultural structure. Her defensive posture and fearful eyes communicate a profound awareness of her impending doom. The detectives distribute this chilling image across federal and state databases, desperate to identify the victim frozen in time. The photograph bridges the massive communication gap that plagued the initial investigation in Texas. It provides a face, a setting, and a definitive timeline for a crime that occurred far off the grid. The visual evidence transforms the invisible predator into a documented monster. The distribution of the haunting photograph triggers a crucial breakthrough across divided state jurisdictions. Detectives operating out of Illinois receive the alert and recognize the structural anomalies visible in the background of the image. The unique patterns of the rusted animal trough and the specific splintering of the wooden beams provide an exact geographical match. These distinct features align with precise accuracy to an abandoned barn located in the rural farmlands of their jurisdiction. Months prior, authorities had discovered unidentified human elements concealed within the dark corners of that exact same agricultural ruin. Forensic specialists compare the photographic evidence with the physical crime scene, matching the wood grain and lighting angles with absolute certainty. The visual record confirms that Regina Walters stood inside that specific Illinois structure during her final moments. This undeniable connection links the missing runaway from Pasadena, Texas, to the arrested trucker sitting in an Arizona holding cell. The geographic puzzle pieces lock together, mapping out the horrifying cross-country route taken by the commercial vehicle. The concrete forensic work dismantles the jurisdictional void that roads used as a shield. The state line barriers fall apart under the weight of the undeniable physical evidence. Law enforcement transforms a cold missing persons report into a robust, undeniable prosecution case. Facing an overwhelming mountain of physical proof, the defense strategy crumbles into dust. The prosecution wields the photograph as an ultimate, silent witness, providing the jury with a direct window into the profound terror inflicted upon the victim. Rhodes realizes he faces an insurmountable wall of photographic and forensic certainty. In the year 1992, the former long-haul trucker pleads guilty to the first-degree taking of the life of Regina Walters. The presiding judge addresses the court, delivering a stern condemnation of the systematic predation executed along the interstate highways. The court hands down a definitive sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The rigid legal system functions with absolute precision, stripping the transient predator of his beloved mobility. Rhodes trades the boundless freedom of the open road for the static, suffocating confinement of a concrete cell. The chilling image of Regina Walters remains a permanent testament to her endurance and a vital piece of history that secured justice. It stands as a stark visual warning of the hidden dangers traveling along the vast, unmonitored asphalt corridors of the nation. Yet, the open highway is not the sole domain where a fatal trap can be sprung upon an unsuspecting victim. Sometimes the most suffocating and inescapable enclosures exist far away from desolate roads and abandoned barns. They can be found right inside the perceived sanctuary of a residential living room, where a simple piece of travel luggage conceals a devastating secret. On the afternoon of February 24, 2020, an emergency call echoed through the dispatch center in Winter Park, Florida. The caller, a woman named Sarah Boone, claimed she had just woken up from a deep sleep to find her boyfriend unresponsive, trapped inside a large piece of luggage. When first responders rushed through the front door, they found Jorge Torres Jr. lying lifeless beside a blue suitcase. Boone portrayed the situation to detectives as a drunken game of hide-and-seek that had taken a tragic, unforeseen turn. However, hid inside her own cell phone was digital evidence that would shatter her constructed story of an innocent accident. Winter Park, Florida, sits just north of Orlando, known for its sun-drenched brick streets, sprawling oak trees draped in Spanish moss, and quiet residential neighborhoods. Tucked away within this picturesque city was a modest two-story apartment complex where Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres Jr. shared a life marred by profound turbulence. Jorge was a man who possessed a troubled but complex human spirit, holding on to fragile hopes for a better future despite the towering shadows cast by his daily struggles. He loved his family and wanted to break free from the destructive cycles that seemed to pull him backward. Jorge harbored a quiet resilience, a desire to find stability in a world that often felt chaotic and unforgiving. Behind closed doors, the reality of his domestic life with Sarah Boone painted a picture of a toxic environment. The walls of their apartment bore silent witness to recurring disputes and an unhealthy dependency fueled by severe struggles with alcohol abuse. Neighbors reported loud, echoing arguments emanating from their second-floor residence during the late hours of the night. The complex was built with thin drywall and shared ventilation shafts, meaning the sharp, stinging voices of the couple often drifted into the living rooms of those living nearby. Law enforcement officers were no strangers to the property, having responded to multiple noise complaints and escalating domestic disturbances. Their relationship was a volatile pendulum swinging between brief moments of calm and explosive, destructive confrontations. Despite court orders mandating that they maintain a strict distance from each other following previous altercations, the couple continued to cohabitate. The legal boundaries designed to protect them from one another were ignored, setting the stage for an inevitable, catastrophic escalation. The spatial geography of their Winter Park apartment mirrored the suffocating nature of their relationship. The front door opened into a cramped living room dominated by a worn fabric sofa and a scattered collection of personal belongings. A narrow staircase led up to the second floor, separating the communal living area from the private sleeping quarters above. This confined space offered no genuine refuge, acting instead as an emotional pressure cooker for two people battling severe personal demons. Their daily life devolved into a relentless cycle of drinking and fighting, an endless loop that eroded any remaining foundation of mutual respect. Jorge often found himself trapped in this relentless emotional crossfire, struggling to navigate the extreme highs and devastating lows of Boone's erratic behavior. The empty bottles that cluttered the kitchen counters served as physical markers of their descent into total dysfunction. Friends and family members watched from a distance, feeling a profound sense of helpless dread as the couple spiraled further out of control. The justice system had attempted to intervene, issuing legal directives meant to enforce a necessary physical separation. Yet, the invisible pull of their toxic bond proved stronger than any piece of court-issued paper. Boone dictated the emotional rhythm of the household, alternating between demanding attention and projecting intense hostility. Jorge, caught in the undertow of this psychological turbulence, returned to the very environment that was destroying him. He was a man drowning in a sea of dependency, looking for an anchor that simply did not exist within those apartment walls. The atmosphere inside the residence grew dense with unspoken grievances and unresolved anger. It was an environment primed for an irreversible tragedy, waiting only for a single spark to ignite a fatal chain of events. The fatal sequence of events began to unfold on the evening of February 23, 2020, under the heavy shadow of profound intoxication. The couple occupied the cramped space of their downstairs living room, the glow of the television casting long, distorted shadows across the carpet. Throughout the night, they consumed massive quantities of alcohol, blurring their judgment and lowering their inhibitions to dangerous levels. Sometime during the late hours, amidst the haze of their drinking, the initial narrative suggests they decided to engage in an improvised game of hide and seek. The physical layout of the room offered very few true hiding spots, limited to the space behind the sofa or within the small coat closet near the entryway. Resting on the floor near the center of the room was a large, hard-shell blue suitcase, an object meant for travel and escape, for reasons known only to the two of them at that exact moment. Jorge Torres Jr. folded his adult frame and voluntarily climbed into the open luggage, The blue suitcase was spacious enough to accommodate clothes for a long journey, but barely large enough to hold a grown man. Once he was inside, Sarah Boone approached the piece of luggage and gripped the heavy metal zippers. With deliberate motions, she pulled the dual zippers along the track, enclosing him entirely within the dark, suffocating confines of the bag. The teeth of the zipper interlocked, sealing away the outside world and plunging Jorge into complete darkness. What began as a misguided activity instantly crossed an invisible boundary into the realm of absolute physical restriction. The metallic click of the zipper tabs meeting at the top marked the definitive point of no return. Once Jorge was securely confined within the heavy blue fabric and rigid plastic shell, the fundamental nature of the situation shifted from a playful game to an act of fatal captivity. The physical reality of the suitcase meant that the oxygen supply inside was limited, blocked by the dense, non-porous material of the luggage casing. Boone stood in the living room, towering above the blue bag that now held her partner immobilized. Instead of unzipping the luggage after a few moments of laughter, she made a conscious choice to leave him trapped inside. Jorge found himself at her mercy, stripped of his basic mobility and unable to force the heavy zippers open from the inside. The apartment grew quiet, save for the muffled sounds of shifting weight as he realized the true peril of his confinement. The spatial restriction forced his body into an unnatural contorted position, compressing his chest and restricting his ability to draw breath. Positional asphyxiation is a slow, agonizing process where the human body is positioned in a way that mechanically prevents the lungs from expanding. Every desperate attempt to adjust his posture within the narrow confines of the suitcase only consumed the depleting oxygen. The sheer panic of sudden claustrophobia gripped him, a terrifying psychological torture compounding his physical inability to breathe. He was trapped in the living room he knew well, isolated within a dark void just inches away from the woman he loved. Boone turned her back on his predicament, ignoring the basic human instinct to offer aid. She abandoned him on the living room floor, an action that initiated his agonizing descent toward a permanent end. The heavy silence of the Winter Park apartment masked the unseen struggle taking place within the blue walls of the luggage. The morning sun of February 24th pierced through the blinds of the Winter Park apartment, illuminating a grim tableau on the living room floor. Sarah Boone dialed the emergency dispatch center, her voice projecting a calculated state of frantic confusion. First responders arrived within minutes, stepping across the threshold of the cramped lower level. The physical geography of the immediate entryway forced officers into a tight bottleneck, funneling their attention directly toward the center of the room. Resting under the pale glow of the overhead light was the large blue suitcase, now partially unzipped. Beside the luggage lay Jorge Torres Jr., entirely motionless, on the worn carpet. Officers immediately established a secure perimeter, taping off the front door and ordering all unauthorized personnel out of the building. The space smelled stale, carrying the heavy scent of spilled alcohol and stagnant air. Boone stood just outside the immediate crime scene boundary, watching the first responders work with an eerie sense of detachment. She portrayed the devastating outcome as a simple, tragic mishap born from extreme intoxication. Her demeanor fluctuated between theatrical distress and cold observation, a contrast that immediately raised quiet alarms among the seasoned patrol officers. They separated her from the immediate area, directing her toward a patrol vehicle parked near the curb. The initial challenge for the detectives arriving on the scene was immense. They needed to decipher the silent narrative left behind in a room devoid of any third-party witnesses. Crime scene technicians descended upon the apartment, carrying heavy black cases filled with specialized measuring equipment and camera gear. They methodically mapped the dimensions of the living room, noting the exact distance between the blue suitcase and the foot of the narrow staircase. The primary focus of their meticulous documentation was the physical condition of Jorge Torres Jr. Investigators observed distinct troubling marks across his body that directly challenged the concept of a peaceful accidental passing. Technicians photographed deep contusions on his back and fresh abrasions across his face. These physical anomalies pointed toward a frantic, desperate struggle against the rigid internal plastic shell of the luggage. The heavy metal zippers of the suitcase also drew intense scrutiny from the forensics team. Detectives noted the internal mechanisms of the fasteners, confirming that opening the bag from the inside was nearly impossible for a grown man compressed in total darkness. A unique forensic challenge materialized before the investigative team. They had to scientifically differentiate between a tragic accident caused by mutual impairment and a deliberate, calculated act of confinement. The external shell of the blue fabric showed signs of stress, stretching outward as if subjected to immense internal pressure. Every microscopic detail was catalogued, from the position of the surrounding furniture to the empty bottles littering the kitchen counter. Law enforcement knew that without a confession, the physical evidence had to speak for the victim. The silent testimony of the bruised skin and the stretched fabric painted a terrifying picture of his final moments. While technicians scoured the apartment, detectives relocated Sarah Boone to a sterile interrogation room at the local precinct. The room consisted of a single metal table bolted to the floor and 2 heavy chairs, completely devoid of any windows or clocks. Investigators activated the recording equipment, prepared to meticulously dissect her version of the previous night. Boone sat beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, adamantly weaving a story of innocence and profound memory loss. She insisted that after securing Jorge in the blue suitcase, she walked up the narrow staircase to her bedroom and simply fell asleep. Her defense relied entirely on the shield of extreme alcohol consumption, claiming the heavy drinking erased her awareness of his confinement. She presented the entire event as a playful game of hide and seek that ended in an unfortunate oversight. The investigative team faced a significant, frustrating hurdle during this initial phase of questioning. No external security cameras pointed into the living room, and the thin walls of the complex had failed to yield any specific witness testimonies regarding the exact moment of closure. Boone recognized this evidentiary void, using the lack of eyewitnesses to reinforce her narrative of an innocent tragedy. Detectives pressed her on the timeline, questioning how a person could ignore the desperate movements of a man trapped directly below their bedroom. She deflected these logical inquiries, repeating her claim of an unbroken drunken slumber. The detectives listened patiently, allowing her to lock herself into a rigid, unyielding timeline. They understood that dismantling the alibi required concrete proof, that her narrative was a calculated deception rather than a hazy memory. The subsequent days presented a grueling test of patience for the investigative team. Law enforcement protocols demanded a strict, methodical approach to overcoming Boone's persistent claims of accidental negligence. Detectives refused to accept her passive narrative, viewing the extensive facial injuries on the victim as clear indicators of a violent, conscious struggle. They initiated the complex bureaucratic process required to secure a search warrant for her personal belongings. The primary target of their legal effort was the smartphone seized from Boone at the initial crime scene. Drafting the affidavit required hours of meticulous paperwork, detailing the physical inconsistencies between her story and the bruised reality of the victim. Investigators had to convince a judge that digital evidence might exist within the device to clarify the timeline of the fatal evening. The physical distance between the police precinct and the local courthouse felt immense as detectives carried the thick stack of documents for judicial review. A rigid legal system dictated that no officer could power on or search the device without explicit judicial authorization. They waited inside the sterile corridors of the courthouse, respecting the exact boundaries of constitutional law while a predator remained shielded by a fabricated story. The judge reviewed the crime scene photographs. analyzing the deep abrasions and the undeniable structural limitations of the blue luggage, recognizing the profound discrepancies in Boone's official statement. The judge signed the critical document. This legal authorization granted detectives full access to the internal memory banks of the seized cellular device. Armed with the warrant, the investigative unit moved swiftly to initiate a deep forensic extraction of the digital data. The seized smartphone traveled from the secure evidence locker to the high-tech digital forensics laboratory. Inside a climate-controlled room humming with computer servers, specialized technicians began the delicate extraction procedure. They connected the device to specialized hardware designed to bypass standard lock screens and mirror the internal hard drive. Every text message, call log, and deleted file was systematically pulled from the silicon chips and transferred onto a secure police server. Digital forensics is a slow, methodical science requiring absolute precision to maintain the integrity of the chain of custody. Analysts sat before multiple glowing monitors, coming through thousands of mundane digital interactions looking for a single anomaly. They focused their search parameters specifically on the late evening hours of February 23rd and the early morning of February 24th. Detectives needed to map Boone's exact digital footprint during the precise window she claimed to be deep in an alcohol-induced sleep. A standard review of the internal camera roll initially yielded everyday photographs of mundane apartment life. However, hidden among the innocuous pictures were media files created during the exact time frame of Horge's confinement. The digital timestamps on these specific files directly contradicted her sworn statements given inside the interrogation room. Investigators isolated the files, preparing to project the raw data onto a larger screen for the lead detectives to analyze. The glow of the monitor illuminated the faces of the law enforcement officers as they prepared to view the restored media. They were searching for a crack in her alibi, but they were about to uncover an unseen horror far beyond a simple oversight. The digital forensics laboratory felt freezing cold as the lead detective leaned toward the glowing computer monitor. Analysts bypassed the security protocols on the smartphone. They navigated through the standard camera roll of the device. The screen populated with rows of square digital thumbnails. Two specific media files stood out against the mundane pictures of apartment life. The digital timestamps anchored these files to the exact late-night hours of February 23rd. This was the precise window of time Boone swore she spent asleep in her upstairs bedroom. A technician clicked the first thumbnail. A high-definition video player launched in the center of the screen. The audio track hissed through the external speakers. Detectives braced themselves for the reality of the recording. The footage shattered her constructed narrative of a tragic mishap. What played before their eyes was an act of calculated psychological torment. The truth of the living room incident emerged from the digital shadows. The recorded footage opened with a wide shot of the downstairs living room. The heavy blue suitcase dominated the center of the frame. The dense fabric of the luggage bulged and shifted in unnatural ways. Jorge Torres Jr. pushed against the rigid internal plastic shell. His muffled voice echoed from within the dark void of the bag. He begged for his life. He pleaded for a single breath of air. The camera lens remained steady from behind the device. The voice of Sarah Boone cut through the desperate pleas. She did not express panic or confusion. She delivered a barrage of cold taunts. She mocked his physical struggle. She dismissed his explicit statements about his inability to breathe. She informed him that his suffering mirrored the emotional pain he caused her. Her voice carried a tone of absolute authority and cruel satisfaction. She weaponized his claustrophobia against him. A second video file captured the final escalation of his confinement. The physical distance between the camera and the suitcase decreased as Boone adjusted her angle. The movements from inside the blue luggage grew weaker. The immense physical toll of positional asphyxiation took hold of his body. The victim fought a losing battle against the heavy metallic zippers. his desperate calls for help faded into a devastating silence. Boone continued to record the scene. She reveled in her absolute control over his fate. The investigators watched the screen with profound disgust. This was not a game of hide-and-seek gone wrong. This was a documented act of intentional captivity. The perpetrator filmed her own crime. She preserved the horrific reality of her actions in high-definition video. The digital discovery transformed a confusing death investigation into a definitive homicide case. Law enforcement officers returned to the Winter Park apartment with an undeniable mandate. Armed with the digital recordings, detectives placed Sarah Boone in heavy steel handcuffs. They charged her with second-degree homicide for the permanent end she inflicted upon Jorge Torres Jr. The arrest initiated an unprecedented legal saga. The Florida justice system became entangled in a web of procedural absurdities. Boone manipulated rigid legal protocols to stall her inevitable trial. Over the next 4 years, she fired 9 different court-appointed defense attorneys. She cited irreconcilable differences with each legal representative. The court permitted these endless delays. A specific constitutional loophole granted her the power to dismiss counsel without immediate penalty. She reached a point of legal exhaustion, forcing the judge to deny her access to further public defenders. In a bizarre twist of arrogance, she created a hand-drawn advertisement seeking free private legal representation. She distributed the crude flyer from inside her jail cell. She believed a charismatic attorney could erase the truth captured on her own smartphone. The exhaustive legal delays collapsed in October 2024. The citizens of Florida formed a jury to evaluate the grim facts of the case. The spatial geography of the courtroom placed the defendant a few feet away from the main projector screen. Prosecutors dimmed the lights and played the harrowing camera roll footage for the entire gallery. The sound of Jorge begging for his life echoed off the wood-paneled walls. The defense strategy crumbled under the weight of the undeniable digital evidence. Her attorneys struggled to reconcile her claims of an accidental tragedy with the cruel taunts captured on the recording. They attempted to frame her actions as a manifestation of prior domestic trauma. The jury rejected this insult to genuine victims of abuse. They saw a predator who filmed her captive partner for personal entertainment. The trial concluded after 10 days of tense testimony. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. They returned a decisive guilty verdict for the fatal act committed against Jorge Torres Jr. The arrogance of the perpetrator met the unwavering wall of moral justice. The final chapter of this tragic saga concluded on December 2, 2024. Sarah Boone returned to the courtroom to face the ultimate consequences of her actions. Prior to the trial, prosecutors offered her a plea agreement of 15 years behind bars. Her inflated sense of superiority caused her to reject the offer. She wagered her future on the delusion that a jury would ignore the visual proof of her cruelty. The presiding judge delivered a scathing rebuke of her lack of remorse. He sentenced her to spend the rest of her natural life in a state penitentiary. The heavy metal doors of the prison system locked away a woman who turned a living room into a torture chamber. Jorge Torres Jr. lost his life in the dark confines of a piece of luggage. His stolen future remains a heartbreaking reminder of unseen domestic horrors. Yet the very device used to mock his final moments became the instrument of her permanent downfall. Justice prevailed because a criminal could not resist the urge to document her own crime. While this case ended with a life sentence, the dark world of digital evidence holds even more terrifying secrets. We must now turn our attention to another predator who believed their hidden camera roll would remain a secret forever. The compulsion to document their deeds ultimately proved to be these predators' undoing, transforming private trophies into the very instruments of their conviction. It leaves us to wonder what other dark records remain hidden in the shadows. Thank you for watching. Click the video on your screen to explore more true crime investigations.